Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Watier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Watier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. We are going to be getting into a study called Hypercaloric 16-8 Time-Restricted Eating During 8 Weeks of Resistance Exercise in Well-Trained Men and Women. So what does that mean for you? Well, if you're curious whether or not you can pack on muscle and get stronger while fasting, we're going to dive into a brand new study that just came out. There are some limitations. There's some really great things that we saw in the data in the different groups. So we'll dive into that and how we can apply it to a fasting lifestyle. If you are new to the podcast, want to welcome you in. Thanks for giving us a shot. Thanks for adding us to your fasting journey. Happy that you are here with us. If you want to know more about Tommy, more about me, our story, our journey, how fasting transformed our lives, head back to episode 0, episode 1. Give them a quick listen. You'll know a little bit more about how fasting and what fasting has done ultimately for us and why we do what we do week in and week out with the podcast episodes, the free resources and guides and the show notes on the website, the challenges that we run, the coaching that we do, because we truly believe that fasting should be a part of almost everybody's health and weight loss long-term strategy and journey.
Oh, yeah.
If you are a long-term listener, welcome back. Thanks for being a Fasting for Life OG. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the shares, the 5-star reviews, the downloads, the subscribes, all the things that keep us relevant and that show us that we're delivering valuable content week in and week out. So we're definitely grateful for all of you listening in with us as well. And again, being on this fasting lifestyle journey with us. So, Tommy, a couple of big picture conversation points for today.
Oh, hold on one second. We actually had a shout out on Spotify recently. I wanted to give a shout out to. Yeah. So Josh said on episode 286, this was episode Shrink Fat Cells by Lowering Insulin, how fasting can burn 300 extra calories daily in visceral fat versus subcutaneous fat. Really, really cool conversation. Go check it out if you haven't yet. Josh said great information and knowledge on shrinking those fat cells by lowering insulin. Absolutely. So that's part of the equation that's not necessarily talked about a lot when we think of calories in, calories out. How am I going to, burn through a few pounds of fat that I want to lose? What about targeting visceral fat? How can I do that? That's important because it's highly correlated with the more dangerous fat rather than the subcutaneous fat. The fat cells that are right around the vital organs is very highly correlated with all of those comorbidities that we talk about and just getting sick and feeling sick, especially as we age. So keeping those visceral fat stores as small as possible is really, really important. So thanks for the shout out, Josh, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you've been with us for a while, we always say, what's the long-term strategy, a long-term plan? We don't really believe in meal planning or kind of broad strokes like those types of things, just because of the sustainability component. So every one of our lives, our day-to-day, our stress, our sleep, our kids, our businesses, our work, our travel, what we call our lifestyle stuff that kind of gets us off track. Heck, for a lot of people, it's just the weekend, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's all a little bit different. So what we need to do is give you the foundation. We want you to take one or two things from today's conversation and put it today, right now, make one different decision, right? That improves your long-term strategy, your long-term goals coming off of this episode. So if you're looking for more resources, guides, fasting schedules, head to the show notes. We've got all the stuff there for you. But when we're talking about big picture today, and we're seeing this a lot more right now inside of our coaching, is where people get to maintenance. They get to their weight goal or within a few pounds of their weight goal.
Heck yeah.
And they're still using the same tools and skills when it comes to a fasting lifestyle, proper nutrition, eating with intentionality, clean fast, opening and closing your fasting window intentionally.
Yeah, shorter fasts, but keeping it clean is very, very important, and keeping it consistent too, not just going like well, I don't really need to fast anymore because I already did the fasting thing and I took the weight off, right? That's the diet mentality.
Yeah, we want to get away from that, more move into this lifestyle adaptation or this habit forming. So when we're looking at this study, we want to talk about, this is a hypocaloric, hypercaloric. So they actually increase the daily caloric surplus to see what it would do for lean muscle gains and fat loss. So This is a good conversation for around the maintenance conversation of like, what do you want your long-term day-to-day to look like when it comes to the fact that you've lost the weight and you want to keep it off. But we're also going to talk about how it applies to a fat loss phase 2 and how we can see the benefit that we get from strategically putting in your fasting windows in your workouts. Because this is something we hear if you're new to working out and you've been fasting, if you're getting back to working out, or if you are working out consistently and you're trying to incorporate fasting, we get a lot of questions about, well, how do we make that work? If I work out, I get hungry. So we're going to talk about all those different scenarios as we kind of go through this article today. So when we're looking at TRE or time restricted eating, that's going to be 16/8. So that's going to be 16 hours of fasting and 8-hour eating window. And most fasting research focuses on weight loss. We talked about it at length, however many episodes we have now, close to 300, right? But we're going to be looking at the investigation of muscle and strength gain in a surplus, not necessarily a deficit. We've gone over dozens of articles that show body composition change, anthropometrics, waist circumference, visceral adiposity, lab changes, that all happen when you're in a time-restricted eating or a fasting state, and how it's actually can be beneficial to get the weight off a little bit more quickly if you have a substantial amount of weight to lose, and you're not doing long-term damage by losing too much lean muscle. So it's protective in nature, right?
Yeah, the counterintuitive part about that is that the extra pounds, the extra fat cells, and especially the visceral fat, but even the subcutaneous fat is having a negative hormonal response. The communication lines between your fat cells and the rest of your body are essentially miscommunicating. And so the quicker that we can shrink those fat cells, the better the balance that gets to restore within the body and the hormonal communication tracks, if you will. So actually shrinking down those fat cells faster is actually better, but it's also counter diet culture. It's against what we've heard so many times in the past. Don't take the weight off too quickly, like slow and steady, right? Slow and steady. But that's kind of an arbitrary thing that doesn't have a basis in actual research. It's just that when you're in a low and slow diet, you've essentially already painted yourself into a corner, especially when you have layers of insulin resistance that kind of change the math, makes the math harder to math, if you will, for calories in, calories out.
So when we're looking at this group, we're going to be split into two groups. So it's 17 well-trained men and women split into two groups, the time-restricted eating group and the normal meal group. So the TRE versus the fed group. And they all engaged in a progressive resistance training, so 4 days a week for 8 weeks of resistance training. They looked at squat strength and bench press as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. And they both ate a high protein, about 30% protein pace, which is what we like to see. We're starting to see this a lot more in the research, and this is what we coach on as well, is making sure we're getting enough protein, not necessarily broken up into 3 small meals a day, but consistently day over day, week over week. So it was a hypercaloric diet, 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and 10% more calories than maintenance, right? So they did some calculations. They found out what their basal metabolic rate was, what their baseline needs were, and they added 10%. So we're talking about a surplus here. For some of you you can also use the word like, well, that's overeating or over-consuming, right? So we're talking about muscle building here, not fat loss. Now, we will extrapolate that out to and apply it to a fasting lifestyle as well. So the group protocols, the fasted group, so the 8-hour eating window, started at least 1 hour after your morning workouts. So these folks actually worked out in a fasted state. This is something that is a learned skill. I prefer to work out fasted. I feel better. My wife prefers to work out fed. So in the fed group, the caloric intake, the intake throughout the whole day, that 10% hypercaloric intake, that surplus, was spread out over about 13 hours. And these folks actually had a small pre-exercise meal.
Okay.
So they ate something before they went to the gym. Both groups tracked nutrition meticulously. There was a 94% adherence for logging, which means that the calories and macros were really closely matched.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, great adherence. The eating windows were about 8 hours for TRE. They started 1 hour after your workout. And then the fed group was about 13 total hours that started 1 hour or right before their workout with a small meal.
Okay. So then whenever I'm thinking about when I'm going to work out and when I'm going to eat, I've never been, I'm like you, I'd prefer fasted. I used to, when I would get up very, very early in the morning to go work out, that would always be fasted. I remember the days when it was, very, very rigorous, vigorous. I would even feel nauseous sometimes, but I would feel worse if I had food on my stomach because it just did not feel good. I would much rather break that fast afterwards.
Let me ask you a question. What was your intention of getting up early and working out? What was your goal?
I mean, the main goal was actually fat loss.
And to lose weight, burn calories.
Yeah, that was my main motivating factor. Now, I enjoyed muscular gains. I enjoyed getting stronger. I used to track 1 rep max across many different exercises. But the number one reason I was doing this was to see the scale move down and to get healthier.
Yep, not necessarily for strength gains or hitting PRs or those types of things. I want to set the stage for that before we get into the results, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the different thought process here of how does this apply to you with a fasting lifestyle if you're in a fat loss phase, right?
Yeah.
So when we look at the adherence, it was great. When we look at body composition, both groups gain lean muscle mass. So what we call fat-free mass.
Mm-hmm.
Similar muscle gain. However, the TRE group actually had a higher muscle gain. So they had a plus 0.267 kilograms versus the fed group, which is plus 1.82. So both groups gained muscle, but the TRE group gained more.
Yeah. I mean, that's close to, that's around 50% more. I mean, small sample size, but still it's substantially more. Not statistically significant, but it's trending in a really good direction right there. So if we had more subjects within this study, we might see some statistical significance there too.
And then for fat mass, so TRE gained significantly less fat than the fed group in a caloric surplus.
Wow.
So the TRE group gained 0.26 kilograms.
Okay.
So I mean, like barely nothing.
Right.
Right? The fed group gained 1.67 kilograms. So this is a meaningful difference if you're a physique-focused lifter.
Yeah.
Right? If you're trying to get on stage. That's not most of us mere mortals. Come on.
Of course.
I've got 5 pounds of visceral fat left. I don't really care what the scale says. I got 170 plus pounds of lean muscle.
Mm-hmm.
My DEXA scan shows I've still got visceral adiposity. It's down from 12 pounds when I was an undiagnosed pre-diabetic trying to do the calorie in, calorie out model.
Wow.
And it just stalled, plateau after plateau after plateau, tired and hungry all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I'm focused on, okay, well now I'm targeting that fat, that visceral fat, that metabolically active fat, the stuff that we don't want around our organs that increases the risk of cardiometabolic issues and diabetes, et cetera.
Yeah.
Right? The life-shortening fat, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
The life-altering fat, right?
Yep.
So it depends on what your goal is, which is why I asked you what your goal is when you used to go to the gym early, and I used to do all the math, get the math to math. And we hear this sometimes when some of our coaching folks, our VIPs, will go hire a personal trainer, and the personal trainer is like not familiar with a fasting lifestyle.
Sure.
So we'll talk about that. They'll make recommendations like, oh, you got to eat here and here and get 30 grams of protein per meal. And there's this disconnect. They're like, well, I thought I was doing it right.
Right. And while the fasting is working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So this study is really empowering for true body composition change at a maintenance goal, right? When you reach your goal. For sure. So when we look at the fat mass, again, TRE 0.26 grams, so barely nothing gained. Fed group 1.67. So obviously a lower increase in the TR group. And then muscles grew in both, but fasting window reduced fat gain in a surplus.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's great. Body composition wins.
Right? Heck yeah. So now let's talk about the strength and performance. So no surprise here. Both groups got stronger. So is it possible to get stronger and build more lean muscle? Yes, it is.
While fat's going down.
And muscle endurance improved in both groups. But the TRE group, and this is not, and we'll talk about why we think it is, The TRE group squat, the 1 rep max, increased less. So it increased by 10.4 kilograms, so over 20 pounds. And the fed group increased plus 14.6, so closer to 30 pounds.
Wow. Okay.
So a 4.2 kilogram difference, so between 8 to 10 pounds.
Okay, so more strength was gained in the fed group, in
Correct.
the longer eating window, the one that was going into the workout fed. They had that that little mini meal or some amount of food before the workout. Okay.
Yep. And bench press gains similarly. So these were the outcome measures that we're looking at. 1 rep max for squat and then bench press gains.
Mm-hmm.
And the TRE group did about 5% fewer total reps in volume throughout the entire. They counted all the reps, right? They tracked all the repetitions, the total repetitions that were done.
Okay.
Now, the total weights lifted over 8 weeks didn't differ. So the air quotes tonnage, the same amount of weight was lifted, but the reps were fewer in the TRE. So what I hear there is, oh, I can do less, but still get the same benefit? Who doesn't want a little piece of that pie?
Right, sure. I mean, and it's no surprise to me that also the TRE group was coming in feeling a little lower on energy when they were going into their workout, which then intuitively makes sense that it would translate into somewhat less volume, which translated into somewhat less strength gained as well. So those three things, I mean, that goes together. I can attest to that on a n equals 1, kind of basis here, where I know if I would have something small, maybe an hour before my workout, I would feel the energy. I mean, you just feel a little bit more blood sugar. You feel that ability to mobilize fuel a little bit faster, and that's it's good to note, and it's good to see how it actually kind of all shook out when things were said and done multiple weeks later. But I would rather go into that workout knowing that, hey, I'm going to feel a little bit less energetic and probably want to do a little bit less as far as volume is concerned, and that's okay, that my performance might suffer a little bit, but I'd rather choose the body composition over the performance personally if I have that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not trying to get on stage or PR a workout, or I mean, I still like to see gains over time, of course.
Yeah, enter a strongman competition, right? That's not a priority.
Yeah, for the majority of folks, this is a great equation, right? So why did the TRE blunt the strength? Well, it's probably due to the adaptation. So now I can go work out and be fine in a fast state. But when I first started, so I said this at the beginning, if you're been fasting and you're starting to work out, or if you've been working out and you're starting fasting, right, you're going to have an adaptation period. So most likely the drive to push for more volume in the TRE group was due to like less adaptation, less substrate available during the workout, right? But eventually you will become fat adapted. There are people that do marathons fasted and, all these different, performance workouts, right? And they've been able to adapt over time, so their body is able to tap into ketones more quickly and not rely on that short-term glucose or glycogen that turns into short-term energy. So when we look at like big picture, practical takeaways, you can gain muscle during fasting, even if you're overeating during your nutrition windows, as long as you're prioritizing protein and resistance training 3 to 4 times a week. And this is what we tell everybody to do. Start the resistance training, clean windows, intentional nutrition opportunities, and prioritize protein, right?
Yeah, if I go back to the beginning of my fat loss phase with fasting, which was why I came to fasting, why many people come to fasting, because they're having difficulty getting the needle to move on a fat loss phase,
or you've hit a plateau.
Using other methods. What I ended up doing that I wish I could go back and change the mentality, but I separated the fat loss from the muscle building at that point because I had conflated the two. I had intertwined the two so heavily over so many years that if I wasn't working out, then I wasn't making as good of food choices. If I was off on one part, I was off on the other, and they tended to come and go at the same time. Okay. And so I didn't feel disciplined enough to make good food choices and stick to my nutrition and these kind of things if I wasn't working out in the gym, which these things tended to fall off because I wasn't seeing the scale move, essentially. So I unwound these at the beginning of my fasting fat loss journey, and I unwound them for a while. I refused to pick up a weight for a while until I saw some substantial fat loss, and then was able to keep it off for a while too.
We hear that concern. You don't want to get bulky, you want to get lean.
Sure, and also it can kind of mask some of the changes that are happening to the
Which,
scale.
what the heck do those words even mean?
Right.
Anyway,
what do they mean? But also, if you think about it, if the scale is your only unit of measurement and you're not confident enough to perceive your body composition changes at that time, then it could feel like I'm doing all this good work fasting, I'm making good intentional food, nutrition choices, but I'm not seeing the scale move. But at the same time, you are improving body composition, but it's just you're retaining more water, and then you're inflating these muscle cells too. So you're maybe your clothes are fitting better, you're feeling energetic, you're lifting heavier in the gym, but at the same time, you're not seeing the result on the scale. So then you're frustrated with the process, and so that's the part that I think I was.
That's where we give up.
Yeah, you can. And I didn't want to see that happen. So I didn't do any resistance training for a while during my fat loss phase. So going back to it, I would rather have implemented something like this, like what we're seeing here, where you're using it strategically. You're not necessarily looking for, performance enhancement or performance gains rather, so much, but then you are seeing a benefit to your body composition. Like that's great. I would love to go back a few years and do that. But, you can only make decisions going forward here. So we can take this and kind of adapt it, even, whether you're in a fat loss phase or a maintenance phase.
Yeah, the long-term plan is the strategy, right? So what's sustainable? What can you keep? What can you not get discouraged by, right? If we're only using the scale. So you alluded to something interesting there too, and we hear this as like the difficulty of fasting, right? Or the difficulty of figuring out when to work out. Because if you work out, you are typically going to stimulate more hunger. And we did a whole episode talking about post-meal hunger, right? And how to strategize to time your workouts to adapt to your fasting lifestyle.
Yeah, recent Q&A episode.
Yeah, for sure. So it's just depends on what your goal is. And you alluded to this, which was the in this study they had a nutrition difficulty rating, right? So this is like a choose your own adventure, pick your poison type conversation.
Yeah.
The nutrition difficulty rating in the study measured how hard participants found it to adhere to the dietary strategies and recommended energy intake. And they used a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being more difficult. There was no significant difference in nutrition difficulty between the TRE, the fasted group, and the fed group.
Okay, that's good.
Both groups reported increasing difficulty following their diets as the study progressed. So it went from a 2.6, so very low in the beginning, to a 4.6 at 4 weeks, so a big increase, and then it slightly increased again to 5.5 at 8 weeks. So it showed that both groups found it harder to keep their, air quotes, diet on track over time. Now, if you're using a fasting lifestyle, we like to simplify that equation for you, and you don't have to track and weigh and measure and all those things, right? You just need to create consistent habits that allow you to make better food decisions and stick with clean eating windows. So when we look at this, it's interesting because these are some of the things that we hear. No matter what way you want to lose weight, either being fat and being at a healthy weight, both come with their own set of difficulties.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a discipline, habit formation, lifestyle adaptation here with a fasting lifestyle that still applies with the calorie in, calorie out model, right? The eat less, move more model. So, when you're looking at the big picture here, if we're looking at what your goals are, you can build and gain muscle if focusing on high protein, quality fasting, and resistance training. If you care about leanness over bulkiness, so to speak, TRE's time-restricted eating fasting tends to skew it into the probably advantageous category. But if maximal strength, especially in your lower body, is your goal, then the traditional let me make the math, calorie in, calorie out, time your meals, more eating over time.
Get some calories in before your workout.
Yeah, eat before you work out, more insulin response, insulin's anabolic, growth hormone, muscle building, then this probably isn't the the path for you. But now we're talking about a maintenance application. So your goals may change when you get to your eventual, we like to call your forever number.
Yeah.
We don't like to call it your weight loss goal, but your forever number, the number you are now going to figure out how to stay at a healthy, lean body weight for optimal health, right?
Yeah.
So choose the method that fits your schedule, energy needs, and personal preference, just like fasting. A fasting window and schedule that works for you, Tommy, right now with a newborn in the house is not the same as me that works with an 8, 6, and 3-year-old and a wife that's in clinic 2 nights a week late.
Yeah.
It's not the same. Our lives are all different. That's why we love this concept of, all right, what's your goal? What problem are you trying to solve? And then how can you put the pieces in place, right? Kind of like an adult anagram, right? We got to move the shapes around.
Yeah.
How do you create the puzzle that works for you for long-term sustainability?
So I was going to ask you a question. Have you ever deliberately been in a caloric surplus before?
When I was powerlifting back in the day, yes.
Mm-hmm. So did you find it easier to adhere strictly to your macronutrients and your calorie goals in a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus?
Yeah, great question.
Because okay, I'm not going to say
in a
anything
deficit.
Else. A deficit was easier for you?
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Me too. And I think most
now
people
it got more difficult over time the closer you got to your goal, of course, which we just highlighted.
Yeah.
But yeah, 100%. Great question.
Surplus is not easy to, it's not comfortable. Like it sounds kind of fun or enjoyable or, something like that. But, especially when you're protein paced and you're you're making good intentional food choices. So it's not just like, hey, let's just kind of eat willy nilly, or I can put in some of my favorites here or whatever. And even if you do, it's still within boundaries, but we're looking for, healthy, good nutritional opportunities here, at least most of the time. I find it much easier to stick with a caloric deficit than a caloric surplus, to your point too. And I think, and that was the finding within this study as well.
Yeah. And that's what a fasting lifestyle ultimately does for you, right? It limits your opportunity, your relationship, how you think and feel about food. You delay, don't deny. It gives you more flexibility, right? So it's a really cool study. And, this isn't for, we're seeing this inside of coaching with a lot of folks that have reached their maintenance goal and now they're figuring out how to live and stay there, right? So they don't get back on the regain train, which is what the stats show, is that 95% of people will end up gaining the weight plus more in between that 2 and 3 year mark, right? Mm-hmm. So ultimately,
so you got to stay vigilant.
Yeah, you got to look at where you are and take note and continue the learning process and use those fasting tools.
Yeah.
Ultimately. And, so back in the day, my goal was to be the strongest, biggest guy in the gym, putting the most amount of weight on the bar. Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. Now, my shoulders, knees, and wrists, just the thought of that. Right. So now I do a lot more low intense steady state. So a lot more weighted vest walks, rucks, hills, sprints 1 to 2 times a week, which I still hate. I'll do zone 2 training on the Peloton. A lot of the stuff I do now is more body weight or kettlebell work rather than putting a lot of weight on the bar and trying to, lift the house off the foundation.
Right. Yeah.
So depending on your goals, as we wrap up today, if you're looking at this from a fasting perspective, the key takeaway is fasting windows or a fasting lifestyle don't have to limit your lean body tissue, your fat loss, and your gain, so to speak.
Right.
But how you schedule your food and your food decisions and your training matters if you still want to perform well. And you can have both. You can eat your cake. You can have your cake and eat it too.
Sure. Yeah. Eat your cake before the workout or, eat it after the workout. But, I think what would be a cool thing too, coming off of this study would be, if they followed up and, had a bit more of a subject sample size within this study.
Yeah, I think there were some limitations for sure. It's small study.
Yeah, I think the results would be cool to see there. I think we would see more similar directionality that we saw, but even some better conclusions, takeaways, more fine points that we could kind of put on some of these things. But also just the fact that they were going into this with a caloric surplus in mind, and then we saw fat mass decreasing. I would love to see what the cardiometabolic markers look like as well, with those, those improvements in body composition. So that'd be really cool too. I have a feeling that physiologically these folks are doing better, after we see these beneficial changes in body composition as well, which is what we typically see, like those things correlate. And so just if you're applying this, and you say, well, I like the time restricted eating, I'm going to do more of that, even if you're close to maintenance or as you get closer to maintenance. What you could do to adapt this also is take what you learn from the fed group, which is that your performance is enhanced whenever you're bringing in some nutrition before that workout. And you could adapt, you could do a hybrid model where you take the nutrition opportunity window, move it a little bit earlier, so you get some nutrition in before your workout, but then you're also still time restricting it, just ending it earlier in the day. And so maybe that looks like opening up your nutrition window at 6 a.m. if it's for an early workout, but then it's closed by maybe it's 2 p.m., right? Yep. And then you're still compartmentalizing in that regard, but you're also enhancing on the performance side too. And this could be done with or without a caloric surplus being an intentional part of your nutrition.
Yeah, I mean, this speaks to the lifestyle adaptation piece, right? So how are we going to figure out to make it work for you? And what you just said there also is really to an earlier eating window, right? And we've shifted our stance on that. The OMAD dinner concept, we've shifted our stance over time because it's clear that you have better insulin function and blood glucose regulation earlier in the day. So moving that window earlier, absolutely. Something we recommend, especially if you've hit a plateau recently.
Yes.
It's a simple thing you can do, a simple lever you can pull. So let me try to wrap up in just one statement as we wrap up today's episode. If you're looking for more support, the Blueprint to Fasting for Fat Loss has schedules, has who, what, when, where, and why. We've got different resources, the insulin assessment, the sleep guide. Head to the show notes, click the link, head to the website, thefastingforlife.com. Grab one of those free resources. Join a challenge. We got a challenge coming up here.
Heck yeah.
We do them, all throughout the year. It's like an accelerated, kind of like a accelerated version of the podcast, right? You're going to get everything we do.
An applicable acceleration. Like let's apply acceleration.
So if you want to speed up your results, decrease the hurdles, feel free to join a challenge. We would absolutely love to have you. So one summary statement here, Tommy, as we wrap up. Time restricted eating approach, quality food, protein-based nutrition choices can support muscle and strength gains with resistance training just as well as a traditional eating schedule, but tends to result in less fat gain, right? Yeah. Marginally reduced lower body strength, but you've done the same amount of work over time. Ultimately, either strategy can work, but most importantly, choose the choice that is the one that fits your goals, preferences, and your fasting lifestyle. So,
love it.
Tommy, love the conversation today, man. As always, thank you so much, and we will talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.